debate caucus of the Yale Political Union to order. Is there an announcement from the president of the Yale Political Union? The president.
Welcome, members and friends. My name is Mor Sepeshi, and I am the 184th president of the Yale Political Union. Now, I have been in and around our sacred union for 3 years now. We have had extraordinary events with truly remarkable speakers, including Prime Minister Theresa May, Ambassador Peter Thiel, Governor Rick Scott, Senator Rand Paul, Martin Luther King III, Al Sharpton, and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, I can say, without a shred of doubt, that I have never observed even close to as much excitement as I have this week for this This week, the Yale Political Union is also honored to host other great thinkers, like former President of Mexico, Ernesto Zedillo, former Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, Twitch streamer Hassan Piker, President of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, and former Vice Chair of the Democratic National Convention, David Hogg. Now, enough about the past and the future. Let's talk about the present. Tonight, we are honored to host Curtis Sliwa, a longtime New Yorker, radio host, and the founder of Guardian Angel, a volunteer organization dedicated to community safety and civic engagement. Instantly recognizable by his signature red beret, and well known for his love of his rescue cats, he has become a larger-than-life figure in New York City. He has also brought his passion for the city into the political arena as a two-time Republican candidate for mayor of New York. And as we found out during our dinner with him this evening, he is not yet a Zoranista. I would like to remind everyone that Yale is committed to protecting free speech and peaceful dissent. Interfering with a speaker's ability to speak and the audience's ability to hear and see is not consistent with the university's free expression policy. I think we are in for a very exciting and engaging evening. Please note that Mr. Steele will be delivering some opening remarks and also, after 5 student speeches, closing remarks. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I move that the Yale Political Union debate resolved, act before the state.
Hearing seconds and no objections, it is so moved. Is there perhaps a first docketed speech in the affirmative?
Based on this reception, you guys and gals have been glazing me before. Although, even though I sat in that red seat, I wear this red beret, I see I am outnumbered by those who are wearing green berets. First off, I just want to thank my colleagues who came with me here to Yale today. It's very prestigious event. James Barone was my campaign manager, Teresa, and my wife Nancy. As you can tell, they're not part of the baby boomer generation, which I am. They're part of your generation. They're millennials and Gen Zers. Every day, we have a ritual in our household. You know that from the President of the United States that I and my wife Nancy are cat lovers. He took a great degree of hubris against us for that. One of the reasons he did not support me as mayor, even though I was the Republican candidate. But along with the cats that Nancy rescues from the shelters who would normally be euthanized, and I want to praise all animal welfare people out there because remember, when a politician is normally talking, and let's face it, we're used to not shoveling snow, we're used to shoveling a lot of bovine organite around. Rarely do you hear the words Mahatma Gandhi stated. But Mahatma Gandhi said that a society that does not take care of its animals does not take care of its people. And that is very obvious, not just in New York City, where I'm from, ran for mayor twice, but obviously throughout our country. So understand, you're going to hear a different kind of a presentation tonight than you've normally heard. That's why many people consider me an outlier. Our ritual with the cats when we wake up in the morning is we tune in to a song that guides me throughout the day. Some of you probably have heard it, an EDM song, Bunt. This is the best day of my life. Let's put a few stars next to that for the turnout tonight. But I have everything to be grateful for. One of the things that came out during the most recent debates was Zoran and the dystopian Andrew Cuomo. Hopefully he crawls back under his rock and never serves. But like so many, I've had my ups and downs. I've been on a roller coaster ride my entire life. And one of the things that was mentioned often by those people who would run into me in the streets and subways where I am each and every day, whether during campaign time or out there caring for the homeless, the emotionally disturbed, and the destitute, is courtesy. Why are you the guy that got shot 5 times? Guess what? I'm not going to do a 50 Cent and expose all the songs. Well, back in 1992, I did get shot in the back of a cab. I have to mention that. And it was about free speech. Because I happened to take on John Gotti Sr., John Gotti Jr., and again, we were they took an exception to that, so they were not ready to sit down in forensic debate. They were willing to settle scores, not in a duel, but rather by killing me. Luckily, I survived, but it was about free speech. And on the cusp of our 250th anniversary here, this great nation of ours, let me just say, this gives me the start on the pathway in terms of diverging away from the vitriol, the animus, the anger, all those things that divide and separate us, and try to merge the different points of view. As I saw, you had 7 different groups here represented. Why don't we have that politically? Why is it just a 2-party system and sometimes only a 3-party? I believe more voices, more debates, more discussion, more free speech as an antidote to hate speech. Because I don't trust politicians no matter who they are. I trust the people. One person, one vote. Not the billionaires. Not the influencers, whoever they are. not the insiders, but rather you, the people. One person, one vote, and I will settle on whoever it is the people choose to lead us forward. But you must always question authority. You must always challenge authority, even if it runs against the grain of typically what your ideology is and will alienate you from your tribe. That's the American way. I'm setting forward a new path. It's a path of common sense. Thomas Paine issued flyer after flyer before our American Revolution, in which he was talking about we the people united. And for the progressives, we the people united will never be defeated. That makes sense. Let me just say that with that comes responsibility, that there are consequences for action. So for instance, I mentioned Thomas Paine, I'll mention James Madison, our fourth president, but also the one individual who did most of the writing of our United States Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And he talked about the three separate bodies of government, the checks and balances which have made us great. And that we are to trust no man or no woman who considers themselves to be omnipotent. And as I heard just last week, and I give credit to President Trump that he sat with the New York Times for 2 hours, something that Joe Biden couldn't have done for 2 minutes. But when they said to the president, what is your checks and balances, Mr. President, he said, my own morality and my own mind. No. That's not what our country is about. That's not what our Constitution is about. That's not what our Bill of Rights is about. It's checks and balances. And everybody needs to be heard. Everybody has the right to be heard. Every idea, every ideology has a history. We should all have access to knowing what that history is as independent and autonomous thinkers, free agents, and coming to our own conclusions. Because I trust you, the people. I don't trust the politicians who oftentimes are the object of idolatry. When Barack Obama was the president, it was a form of idolatry. Many Democrats would not challenge things that made no sense, that we knew were lies. For instance, with my Obamacare, you will keep your own doctor. You could tell that was a lie. But there were Democrats who refused to stand up and challenge the president on that, or even question elements of Obamacare. And as Nancy Pelosi told her colleagues, go ahead, sign it. Don't just say yay, and you can read the bill later. That's not what our country is about. And then in the last 2 weeks, when our president decided that he wanted to do the second making of Canadian Bacon, if you ever saw that movie by Michael Moore, except this would be Greenland Bacon, wanted to invade Greenland. Now, I happen to be a Republican. Many of my fellow Republicans call me a rhino, Republican in name only, and I think you can understand why I've gotten that tag. But I said, you're nuts, you're out of your mind, we're going to invade Greenland. And then in a knee-jerk reaction, immediately, what was the response? Well, there's a method to his madness. Really? Invading Greenland. Sorry, challenge authority, question authority, answer. What kind of lunacy is this that you're suggesting we invade Greenland and we take Greenland from Denmark? What have the Danes done to this? They gave us lutefisk and fiskeball. And they've been great allies of ours. The other thing that you must consistently do on your own pathway, and you will be subject to your own twists and turns, your own roller coaster ride, is to understand that one person can make a difference. One woman, one man can make a difference. And that true change comes about from the outside, being an outsider, looking in. Many have said in my loss to Zoran Mamdani, well, why doesn't Zoran give you a job maybe in the administration where you could be in charge of animal welfare, you and your wife, since you've dedicated your life to that? I would last all of 5 seconds in anybody's administration. The moment I would see something that clearly was not right, I would speak out. My voice would be heard. You will have an opportunity from the outside to make a difference, and not necessarily through the two things that most Americans that I have found are not in trust of: big business and big government. If there's one thing that unites us all as I have traveled this country, Americans will tell you, who are not political ideologues, they do not trust business, big business, they do not trust big government. But when you're on the outside, when you are called an agitator, when you are called someone who will not sort of turn your own focus and your own pathway into a normal mainstream process, you get chastised. You get accused of not wanting to do things the normal way, when in fact, by establishing something that you've done independently and autonomous with a group of people who think as you do, to make change, to help those that cannot help yourself, you have earned the right to not only speak, but to potentially be a leader for different parts of this country that are in need. Let me be specific. There are two categories of persons in our country who are disparaged on a regular basis: homeless and emotionally disturbed. We've seen this problem all over our country. We have had a number of individuals who have risen to the occasion and act as if they can be leaders who can correct these problems of our growing population that is homeless, that is emotionally disturbed. One of my motivations to run for mayor the first time, in the aftermath of Bill de Blasio. Bill de Blasio was a mayor who was consumed by smoking Maui Wowie and Hindu Kush. His first operation every morning, he'd always wake up late, was going puff, puff, pass. And yet our problems grew in tremendous scope. And then the next answer was going to be Eric Adams, swagger man with no plan. Don't invest in his New York token. That Bitcoin is nothing more than crime coin. Because he epitomized what is a problem in so much of our normal politics, which is corruption. And then there was this election cycle, precedent-setting, historical. There's never been a mayoral election like this that attracted not just local, regional, national, but international attention. Zoran Mamdani, nobody knew back in November of 2024. Only his neighbors knew for sure. And then there was the man who was going to be coronated the next mayor, Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo. Best known for slapping fannies and killing graves. A horrible human being. Sexual harassment and death. The untold death of so many men and women in his care during the lockdown and pandemic. And a refusal to acknowledge a man who fled his responsibilities as governor, only to come back, I would say, out of the grave, like a zombie, a political zombie. And we were all supposed to be grateful. And then, of course, it was me, Curtis Sliwa, running as a Republican. And Zoran kicked his butt in the primary. With his authority, going out and doing major retail politics. And he discovered what was of interest to most people. He found that vein. Affordability, cost of living. and he did it early on in his campaign. And obviously Andrew Cuomo was oblivious to it, and I wasn't even involved in the process. Because I was marginalized. Remember, I was the spoiler, even though I was a mainstream candidate of the Republican Party. I should have dropped out. They bribed me with $10 million. Then they threatened to do harm to my wife, myself, and others. But we stood firm because we were on a mission. That mission was to give people an opportunity to choose the next mayor. And even though I disagree with Zoran on so many issues, the people have spoken. He is the mayor of New York City. He's entitled to put his agenda in effect. But there will come a point, I don't doubt it, that I will be the one to get the clarion call. It's time to hit the barricades. To the barricades, like in Lehman set up. And that's part of the democratic process, not through violence, but through discussion, debate, and partaking in discussion. The one thing that I see on a regular basis that my party has completely thrown to the wayside is how many of you in the future and how many of millennials and those who get a college and university education now are crushed with student loans. Crushed. President Donald Trump and Republicans said a deal made is a deal done. Pay up your debt. Yeah, what about Argentina? Argentina has borrowed money from the International Monetary Fund 21 times. Javier, this time because he likes to go like this, gets an additional 20 billion of our dollars. And we know we're not going to get a nickel, dime, and penny back. But we're not going to help our millennials and those Gen Zers who believe in the American dream, who have been told if you get a white-collar job, if you develop a profession, 4 years of school, a graduate degree, and become a CPA or a financial analyst, or like my wife Nancy, an attorney, then you'll be able to live the American dream. At some point, you'll be able to have your own home, your own car, except in the beginning of the month, you're crushed with the student loans that you're now still living in a dormitory at the age of 45 with 3 other people sharing a bathroom. I understand why your generation is pissed off, and rightfully so. That we would bail out others, but not take care of the people that we promised. If they worked hard, if they played by the rules, they would live the American dream. And then the masters of the universe have emerged. The billionaires. The Elon Musk of the world. And they have said, have no fear, trust us. Artificial intelligence is on the way. And with artificial intelligence, no need to debate it, no need to discuss it, no need to have town hall meetings, no need to have the advocates or the adversaries discuss it at length so that we, the people, can make determinations. This is in your best interest, because even though many of you will lose your careers, will lose your jobs, for the time being you'll suffer. You will suffer, you will have no income. But in the future you will have abundance. And you will have a guaranteed income. You trust any of that bullschnizzle? Of course not. We have a right to be heard on this. And if you notice, both political parties, they very carefully approach this subject. I know it affects predominantly your generation. Driverless vehicles. What are we going to do with all these women and men whose careers, whose livelihoods are based on driving vehicles for, don't worry about it, they say, as their profit margins keep going up. Billions of dollars are being invested in these new technologies. And all I'm suggesting with common sense is, before we shift into gear, let's make sure that we, the people, are on board with this. We understand the ramifications and what this is going to do in the future. Because in the future, you are going to bear the burden. Not me. I'll be dead and buried. That is, if the Gottis and Gambinos don't finish the job. A $38 trillion debt growing. Other countries now following our lead, Japan, England, Italy, France, debt, taking away from all the programs that we normally support, from the military to Social Security to Medicare to Medicaid to everything that makes us the country that we are. Who's going to pay that? You. And if you decide to have children or grandchildren, it'll be their responsibility. What a scandal! What an absolutely horror that we move full speed in building up this debt, and we don't have one party out there who is saying no, 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 no. Well, guess what? The common sense way is going to say no, 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 no. We cannot do this to your generation. We cannot do this to a future generation. And what we have and what we need desperately is term limits. Look at some of these colleges in the Senate and in the House. I mean, you're going to crack 100 years old soon. And they will not leave until death do us part. Term limits in the Senate. Term limits in the House. Term limits for federal judges. Let's make way for a new generation. Baby boomers, it's time to let go, and that includes me. But we can all agree on that. We don't have to be adversaries. We don't have to make this confrontation. We can do this through dialogue. We can do this by having discussions. There is no party that is leading in this direction. What we need is a common sense platform that moves us in this direction so that we all have an opportunity to engage, to do what's in everyone's best interest. Not the influencers, not the insiders, not the billionaires, not the masters of the universe. And remember, they come in different political stripes. They're not all Republican, they're not all Democrat, some are independent and autonomous, but they think they know the way. So let me suggest just briefly, if I can, how much time do I have?
Like 6-7 minutes.
Very good. I'm staying within line, or we'd be here forever. You give Curtis Sliwa a microphone, you may never get it back. But the question is, with your education and with what you are going to leave Yale with, what are you going to do to make for a better world? Because oftentimes we focus just on politics, but there are so many other activities that people are involved in. Are you going to be a selfless servant or a self-serving servant? Are you going to act because of your education and what you've been able to achieve academically? You're entitled to a certain way of life? Or are you going to be comfortable and understand you came into this world, as I did and everyone else did, with nothing, and when you leave this plane, you will have nothing except honor, integrity, and having established a way of life. We have this unique opportunity in this our 250th anniversary to analyze everything that good has happened in this country and everything, yes, that has happened bad in this country to get us to this point that we're at now. And your generation now has an opportunity to take us on a path where just like 7 different groups are here today, and you will be debating some of these points, and you better not be glazing me. You will leave together in harmony and solidarity, and you will continue to meet again to debate the issues of the day. Again, very quickly speak about Minneapolis. There's one thing I'm known for, it's public safety. I've been in almost every one of these cities with Guardian Angels. We're in 13 countries, 130 cities, and I spent a lot of time doing that. When people are exercising their right of free speech and protest, and I've done that many times. In fact, I've been arrested 81 times. And acts of civil disobedience, because that is the American way. I do not want my government calling people domestic terrorists who are out there exercising their rights. And I want our leaders to understand that they have a responsibility to stop, to analyze the facts, to then release what facts they've determined, but also to compare it to the facts that other people have acquired in the process. And then we will let the people of the United States, the people of Minnesota, the people of Minneapolis, the people who pay the taxes, the people who have the right of free speech to be heard. And we're only going to get to that point if there's cooperation, not antagonism. So I come before you tonight as a survivor of the process that is probably the dirtiest that has ever existed, politics. And I know that some of you look forward to getting involved in this thing of ours, politics. And I wish you good luck. And I wish that you will come in like the tidy bowl man or tidy bowl woman and clean up what has become a process where money is considered free speech. The United States Supreme Court has said that money is the equivalent of free speech. Let me be very clear. That homeless person that's out in the square somewhere in New Haven tonight has just as much right to free speech as any billionaire. And what has it led to? Tax and great money and uncontrolled fiscal resource to try to influence elections. How about nonpartisan elections where the best person gets elected? How about allowing the growing number of independents who in your generation are outnumbering those registering now as Democrats and Republicans? How about allowing them to vote in primary elections and be part of the process? I want more democracy. I want more involvement of the people. I want more debates. I want more parties. I want more voices to be heard, because that's what America was 250 years ago, and that's what we collectively should put forward for the America that you are going to inherit from the baby boomers and then give off to a new generation. So thanks for having me here tonight at Yale.
Question.
You know, I never graduated high school. I never graduated junior. I never had a graduation. Aren't you supposed to toss your green berets in the air? Like, yay, courtesy. Yeah, that made me feel good.
Questions for the guest. Perhaps a question, President.
So the guest talks a lot about us questioning authority. My question becomes, at what point is questioning authority through words not enough? What does the guest think about vigilantism? When is it ever okay? How do we know what the best appropriate action is to rebel against oppressive systems?
Well, as somebody who has been called the world's #1 vigilante, that's what I've been labeled with, which is not true. We're not the guardian angels. We're not judge, jury, and executioner. We do not carry weapons. We do not determine who's right or who's wrong. We are citizens like anyone else with no special powers or privileges. But you can challenge authority. And when I first heard that over and over, challenge authority, question authority, it was from Dr. Timothy Leary, who I debated on many occasions around the country. And actually, he was thought of as the guru of LSD, but we had many conversations, and he said, "George, one thing we always have to do in life is question and challenge authority." We never discussed it as reverting to violence. Those on the left will point to J6. Those on the right will point to the summer of George Floyd. And I certainly saw a lot of that and had my jaw broken in the streets of New York City in the process of that. That is not a recourse. There are so many other avenues that we can take that should not lead to violence.
Further questions for the guest? Perhaps a question. Mr. Page.
Thank you guys for a very fine speech. You talked about your experience this past election season and being offered $10 million by members of the billionaire class to either drop out or throw the race for some reason or another, right? And I respect, like, that's part of my French, that's real nigga stuff. That's great work, and I'm very much impressed by that. But to be able to have a portion of our society that's able to exercise such power, able to act unilaterally, as you mentioned, to be able to take and influence people in the way that you describe being unconscionable. And to have neither party, Democrat nor Republican, the mainstream parts of that face be really genuinely concerned with stopping that. What ought we do? What ought we do as people to act before the state? We won't act for ourselves.
We just look at the political process. I've known many men and women who have entered the political field, Democrats and Republicans and independents, who are very idealistic, really wanted to make a difference. And then they become some of the few who win because incumbents win almost 97, 98% of the time. So now they're part of the club. And immediately they're welcomed into the club. And now you want to raise as much money as you can to prevent anybody else from challenging you in a primary and anybody else from challenging you in a general election. You're part of our club now. That to me is so offensive. You need to maintain your idealistic point of view. The older you get, the less idealistic you will be. You will become jaded and skeptical. I thank my parents, my best role models, for always keeping me focused and saying, you got to fight for what you believe in, Curtis. As long as you do the work, we'll be with you every step of the way. And I will take that idealistic streak right into the grave. It is what separates the doers from the survivors. And so many of you, regardless of what your political ideology is, whether you happen to be progressive, whether you happen to be reactionary, whether you happen to be moderate, whether you happen to be independent, you must maintain that idealistic streak. And we have to hold your feet to the fire. When we see all of a sudden you came in, you had maybe a net worth of $350,000, and now you're thinking of leaving Congress and you're worth $30 million. It's worth us challenging authority, asking, where did that money come from? Because you didn't have that money going in.
Further questions for the guest? Perhaps a question. The senior treasurer.
Mr. Sliwa, you did something that I've never seen before, which is like unite the Yale Political Union, and which is remarkable. But I wanted to ask, hearing from your speech and also the dinner, it seems to me like 100% of the primary or the Republican primary races, which Trump endorses, wins. It seems like the Republican Party has become more and more the party of Trump. Why are you a Republican?
I didn't join the Republican Party because of Donald Trump or anyone else. If anything, it's the party of Abraham Lincoln. That's who the Republican Party is, the party of Abraham Lincoln, not the party of Donald Trump. Number two is that I was happy being the chairman of the New York State Reform Party, where I got to deal with Republicans, Democrats, independents, reactionaries, progressives. That's when I felt best, because now we were talking about reforming the system. And then my little pretty Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo came along as well. And there was a woman that you all know from Sex and the City, Cynthia Nixon, a progressive. who decided that she would run and challenge him for governor on an independent line, the Working Families Party line. How dare you? And as a result, he decided to whack every independent party. New York State was always known for its independent parties. There were the Libertarians, good party. The Green Party, good party. Independence Party, although that was a play on words. Reform Party, very good party that I was chairman of. And there was the Conservative Party, and there was the Working Families Party. Well, guess what? All he did was strengthen the Working Families Party. He raised the necessary votes you had to get to maintain your status, so we all got whacked. And then when Zoran Mamdani voted on the day of election, November 4th, for mayor, he voted for himself and everyone else he was supporting on the Working Families Party line as an FU to Andrew Cuomo, who stifled democracy. So as you pointed out, I seem to be able to reach out and touch people of different political persuasions. If I could have remained chairman of the Reform Party, I could have continued to do that. But being a Republican, having that R in front of my name, immediately, it almost prevents that, as it does from somebody who has a D in front of their name. No, we have to bridge that divide. There's some things that we're in agreement with, and there are other things that are obviously we're adversarial about.
Is there perhaps a penultimate question for the guest? Perhaps a question, Mr. Mohan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the guests for coming. I wanted to just go back for a very quick second to the resolution. Really quick. It was an act before the state, and I noticed that the gentleman throughout his speech repeatedly maligns influencers. So I guess my question is, I feel like personally that influencers are acting before the state. They're challenging that state media narrative. I think that I'm exposed to new, interesting perspectives of the government that they want me to see by my social media, by the influencers that I interact with on a regular basis. So I guess my question is, given that the gentleman supports acting before the state, why does he oppose smaller, non-institutional media players like influencers? Thank you.
There's Robert Rules of Order, right? Right, the resolution, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Oh boy, it's a tough one. What I object to, let me quantify that, is the self-appointed influencers, who all of a sudden you look at their social networking, and they have all these bots. And it gives you the impression that maybe they have 1 million or more followers that are all interested in whatever they have to pontificate about. And then we find out that, in fact, that's not the case. Sure, you can try to influence things. Your voice is entitled to be heard. But let's do it on a legitimate basis. So, yeah, I quantify what I had said originally. You can be an influencer. But let's not self-appoint yourself, which too oftentimes happens. And actually is a detriment to the process, because now you may be actually spewing a lot of misinformation as a so-called influencer, which I don't know what that means, but I'll go halfway with you on that.
For perhaps a final question for the guest, Mr. McMaster.
Mr. Sliwa, thank you for being here tonight. For the good of New York City, a city you love, why didn't you drop out and give Mr. Cuomo a shot? Now we got
What an alpha this guy is.
Decorum. Is there...
Let me ask a question. Are you a math major?
Yeah.
If not, let me explain.
Mr.
Even if Andrew Cuomo got every vote that I got, he still would have lost this all right.
And with that, the guest is thanked. By a vote of 82 in the affirmative, 30 in the negative, and 3 abstaining, this resolution passes. Is there there perhaps a final motion? Mr. Blake. Hearing seconds and no objections, it is so moved. Hey, thank you very much. Whew, my voice is gonna go. I don't have your stamina yet.
Bryce,
Okay.
can we have you sign our posters for our archives? And also, if you can do it for me and the film that you just ran, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, guys, after we vote.
So wait, I'm gonna record a graphic.
We're gonna take a picture and then you can ask. Yeah.
We printed out an extra just in case.